With the first pick overall, the New Jersey Devils are proud to select from the U.S. program, Jack Hughes.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Heads Up Hockey. This is Jersey Joe. This is the night edition. This is the pre-NHL trade deadline New Jersey Devils edition today. And recently mentioned on the fourth period by Dave Pagnotta that the Devils are looking at currently two guys right now. You have two wingers that they're aiming for in Timo Meier and Brock Boeser. So both players were drafted by West Coast teams and in the Pacific Northwest. And I'll give you a little description of each one of them by their draft -1 year all the way through their draft +3. And I'll tell you what they're doing points per game wise, stuff like that. And we're going to go with the first one. It's Timo Meier. He has played in more games than Brock Boeser has because he's been able to stay healthier than Brock Boeser. So in D-1, Timo Meier scored an 11 versus Brock Boeser 16, and Brock Boeser scored pretty high for a high schooler. And Timo did just fine with the QMJHL, coming over from Switzerland. But then in his second year, Timo scored a 31, which was very high for his second year, and beats out Brock Boeser's 27 from the USHL. So the USHL is a step below the NCAA. So pretty much Timo Meier looking like the guy, being who he is. And Meier goes on to move up to +36 in his draft +1 season. So you look at Brock Boeser in his first year in the NCAA D1 with Minnesota for the Golden Gophers, scores a 50. What a big move for the sharpshooter from Minnesota. So you go on to the next year. The D+2 for Timo Meier is a 33. Brock Boeser puts up a slightly better year than Meier does with 37. However, Brock Boeser still declined significantly from his draft +1 year. So, and we move on to the draft +3. So both players made it to the NHL in the draft +3 seasons. Now, let's get to the good part. Timo Meier becomes a NHL player scoring a 36 basis points. And then you go over to Brock Boeser with his time beginning in Vancouver, scoring a 73. So, if you go back a few seasons, anyone can correct me, but I think, let me just look this up. Let me see. Brock Boeser, first NHL draft year. Elite Prospects.com. Here we go. Here is going to be the answer. Drum roll, please. Alrighty then. His first full season was 62 games. Scored 29 goals and 55 points. That's pretty good for a rookie who isn't a blazing fast player, but is someone who's a sharpshooter. And let's see who was on that Vancouver Canucks team. The Sedin twins. Bo Horvat, Thomas Vanek, Alexander Edler, Sam Gagne, Brandon Sutter, the dreadful Louis Erickson, Michael Delzato, really? It's been that long. Jake Virtanen, Nikolai Goldobin, Marcus Granlund, Troy Stetcher, Chris Tanev, UC Jokinen, Darren Archibald. Wow, this team actually was somewhat decent. Yeah, somewhat decent. And Brock Boeser that year led the Canucks with 29 goals. And you look at the points, he and Daniel Sedin were tied with 55 points. Yet Daniel Sedin played in 81 games. That is success for a young rookie. Now, let me compare Brock Boeser to Timo Meier. So, I love this feature where you can put players side by side. And let's go from here. So, for those of you who don't know, Brock Boeser was born in 1997 in February. And you have Timo Meier was born in October of 1996. So, what does this have to do with anything? Well, Brock may be a little bit younger, but he developed a little bit more quicker. However, both guys pretty close in age. And there's a little bit of an outlier there. So we'll get to all the highlights. So you have Boeser, he's achieved at the Hlinka Gretzky bronze medal. Then you have the one-time under-20 World Junior bronze medal. Then the NCAA championship winner. The NCAA West first All-American team. NHL All-Rookie. One-time USHL. And then another first All-Star team. And then you go to Timo Meier. One-time world champion silver medal. Then you have one-time QMJHL champion. Then one QMJHL second All-Star team. Yes. Pretty well-established players. Nothing wrong with that. So, if you go by what these guys have done, let's put it in perspective. Let's put the Hlinka Gretzky tournament stuff behind. Timo Meier versus Brock Boeser. Brock Boeser is the better points per game player than Timo Meier. Brock Boeser does not beat Timo Meier's 312 total points. However, Brock Boeser has 286. So they're very close. Now, if you go by assists, Brock Boeser is only off by 5 assists versus Timo Meier's 151 versus Brock Boeser's 130. And yes, with both players being the go-to guys on their not-so-well-structured team, Brock Boeser has a minus 24 throughout his 7 years in the NHL. Timo Meier has a minus 31. Plus minus doesn't really mean much in my book. It's all about the points. So the points per game belongs to Brock Boeser. Oh, and just in, New Jersey Devils scout at the Sens versus Habs game is Al Santilli. So it looks like the Devils are keeping an eye on Josh Anderson. However, I will say this, I'll do him later in the episode. I still think the Devils are going after Timo Meier really hard, and I have to agree with Dave Pagnotta and my boy Jim Berger that the Devils, for those of you who saw that tweet, I really do think the Devils are really going hard first after Timo Meier. And if the asking price is what the Vancouver Canucks got in return, then I see the Devils going for Brock Boeser. I really like the fact that the Devils are going after a primetime goal scorer, but you don't want to unload too many assets for a splashy move. However, Timo Meier and Brock Boeser have something a little bit different than each other. Boeser is going to be a free agent in 2025, so there's no negotiating there. Timo Meier has a $10 million qualifying offer. And another person out there on Twitter went to say from San Jose Hockey Now that Boeser is looking for $9 million in a qualifying offer. So, with that being said, I see the Devils getting a nice contract for him, and they still resign Jesper Bratt long-term, and they'll eventually offload a couple bottom six guys in the offseason or in a trade or two, and then they find someone on the back end to help close the gap between moving either Kevin Ball or Nikita Okhotyuk. And I think Ball gets moved, but Okhotyuk isn't too far off from being a stable stay-at-home defenseman who can chip in offensively, but is on the right track for success. And any team out west getting Kevin Ball growing up, he's going to be something interesting for a defensive defenseman who's learning to really grow. And I don't mean that when the pun intended, being a big guy with a 6'7" frame. Now, back to Timo Meier. He has so many connections with the Devils, and it's not even funny. And the Devils do have connections to the Vancouver Canucks. Not the Vancouver Canucks, the San Jose Sharks. Tom Fitzgerald's brother works for their staff. Mike Greer is the GM of the San Jose Sharks. And you look at both teams, they're pretty much down and out. And they're going to tank hard for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. And you just look at how Vancouver was able to get a very solid return for moving Bo Horvat. I admire Bo Horvat, although I never really got to watch him a lot because he was on the West Coast for so many years. But when the Devils would play against him, you really saw in your eyes like, we should have got this guy. We could have done better. But at the same time, theoretically, long term, you get Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier down the road. But, you don't want to have an alternate pass now. Because right now, the present and the future are very bright in the Garden State. Now, I always tell people this, that Tom Fitzgerald has his pulse on other players in the league, and I really see the Devils getting that big gun on the wings, and they get a defenseman in return who's a veteran. Maybe not in one of these trades, but definitely I'm a big fan of Niko Mikkola. And why do I bring him up so much in my hockey articles? So I am a big fan of big physical players, nothing sexy. I like grit. I like physicality. I want to see a hard hip check, someone who's going to keep the opponent honest and make them feel more humble and stay away from the net. And it makes me think that you look at a team like the Blues and the Canucks, and they got some really interesting pieces. Luke Schenn is mentioned. Niko Mikkola, my favorite, honestly. But I'm not looking for someone who's going to score goals. I look for someone who's going to be strong and powerful. So you look at Braden Schenn. He's got the same kind of contract as Mikkola up at the end of 2023. And Mikkola will only cost you $1.9 million. Right now it'd be prorated. He's definitely up for a new contract, as well as Luke Schenn is only going to cost you $850,000. This is all per cap friendly. And you definitely need to look at the age difference. And yes, I'm the same age as Luke Schenn, but I'm a little bit older. Mikkola is 7 years apart from Schenn, so he's 7 years younger. So the Devils could get more use out of him. However, I have nothing against certain players with age, but I do buy into their overall stats. And you need guys going to be physical, gritty, that definitely will make an impact in the playoffs, in the regular tail end of the season. And this would be good because you don't want to have to rush Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec too quickly. Now, let's start off with Luke Schenn. Points per game, he's a .20. So he beats out Niko Mikkola by .06. And you move over to the total points, Luke Schenn has the most points in a 15-year span. Meanwhile, Niko Mikkola is only scored 20, but you have him playing more of a defensive game. Schenn is 185 total points, though. So if you're really going for a guy who scores a lot of assists, it's Luke Schenn. And he's a tough player to go up against. Mikkola, on the other hand, 16 assists, 4 goals. Mikkola's played in 139 games in 4 years. You're getting Schenn, who's played 912 in 15. However, if you look at the playoffs, this is where it gets interesting. Mikkola has .13 points per game, 10 penalty minutes. Then you look at Luke Schenn, .19 points per game, 22 penalty minutes, plus 6. And Luke Schenn has 3 goals 3 assists in 6 points in 4 years. Mikola, 2 assists in 2 seasons. So he gets a point for every 8 playoff games he plays in. So each series, 4, 8, 12, 16, that's every time he goes for 4 rounds, he scores a quarter of the time. So really, if you can't get Luke Shen, then Mikola would be a good option. I really think that the Devils have an interesting case on their hands, and you take a look at these guys. Let's take a look at some of their achievements. So by the time you look at Luke Shen at age 30 and 31, he won the Stanley Cup twice with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then Niko Mikkola, before he came to the NHL, World Championship gold medal, World Championship top 3 player on the team. You have him at age 20, Liga silver medal. So that is a good achievement, really good achievements. Now you look at age 19, Mikkola had the U20 SM Liga bronze medal, U20 World Junior gold medal. Looking at Shen, same age, NHL all rookie team. You had NHL Young Stars roster, World Championship silver. So really, these guys aren't, just some physical players that don't have any pedigree. They do. These guys know what they're doing. And the Devils need that veteran piece who's going to help guide the younger players on defense through the beginning, the middle, and the end of the latter half of the season and the playoffs. And if the Devils are able to make some bold moves that doesn't hurt them in the long term, they'll be just fine. I don't expect Tom Fitzgerald to make any Lou Lamoriello-like moves. And, speaking of which, let me dig into that. Anthony Beauvillier. Yes. Anthony Beauvillier and Aatu Räty. So let me compare both guys for those who are Canucks fans and maybe Islander fans who didn't get a chance to really enjoy these players. So they're 5 years apart. Despite them being Canadian and Finnish, they're both forwards, but Beauvillier is more of a winger than he is a center, but Aatu Räty definitely is a center. And you take a look at what the Vancouver Canucks really have. So in the past 5 games, Beauvillier does have a goal. Not a goal. He has an assist, but no goals. Räty doesn't have any of the past 5 games. However, let's go over to Anthony Beauvillier. Let's get to their other numbers. Age 20. Let's start there. Aatu Räty and Anthony Beauvillier, different seasons. You look at the AHL, Beauvillier was with the Sound Tigers and ended up making it to the NHL. Only played in a few games, 3 games, with 2 goals. And Räty made it up from the Bridgeport Islanders in the 22-23 after 7 goals, 8 assists, 15 points in 27 games. Now, Beauvillier, when he was in the 17-18 season, 21 goals, 15 assists, 36 points. These guys aren't just throw-ins in a trade. They actually have upside. And you take a look at what Beauvillier has done in his first year versus Ratu's second season. Beauvillier is the better player when it comes to points per game with .67 versus .52 for Ratu. And Beauvillier has 2 points in his first season. So Ratu with 15 has 7 goals, 8 assists in 29 games played. So really, that was in the AHL. Those were those numbers. Now, you look at the NHL level. Beauvillier, 7 seasons, 457 games. Ratu with 1 season under his belt, 12 games played. And Beauvillier is an established player. 209 total points, 102 goals, 107 assists, .46 points per game. Ratu, only 2 points in those 12 games. Now, Beauvillier is the established player. He's going to help the Vancouver Canucks the most. But if they can develop Ratu more as a young guy, that's going to be a huge steal. And plus that first round pick, that's a conditional top 12, I really think is going to get the Vancouver Canucks a really good pick, whether it's in this draft or the 2024 draft. I am excited for the Vancouver Canucks for once. And I really think that they're going to win this trade if Bo Horvat doesn't re-sign in the Islanders. If the end of this podcast, there's an update, I'm going to have to tweet something out on Twitter. But I really think the way Vancouver is looking, it's going to be better in the longer term for them. But right now, things are pretty grim. And as someone who's a Devils fan and a hockey guy, I really value assets, whether you're a building team, retooling, or building a contender, and a contender becoming a Stanley Cup contender. So these are all, intangibles that you can't take too lightly, but they must be taken seriously because you just don't know what happens next. And I really want to see everyone build together through their asset management. So, with everything I have really talked about today, don't be afraid to say hi to me on Twitter at JerseyJoe11_NJ. I'm also on Instagram, and this podcast is on Spreaker, Jaya Savan, and even Amazon Music /podcasts. And a buddy of mine tweeted out something from sportsnet.ca. So this is a little update from earlier in the show. Bulletin 11. This is from L.A. Freeman. I wouldn't say New Jersey is the team to beat on Timo Meier, but it's clear teams know the Devils are very much in it. The biggest balancing act for them might be their salary structure. It sounds like they prefer to have no forwards above Jack Hughes' $8 million annual average, or at least not blowing that out of the water. That's not only a consideration for Meier, but also Jesper Bratt. Okay, so let me think about this. Remember a podcast or two ago, I was talking about Tommy Fitzgerald going to pull off a bit of the Boston Bruins hometown discount. So this is what I mean, that it looks like Timo Meier may have to agree to an $8 million AAV or around 9 or 10 million, but nothing like David Pastrnak money. So then you have Jesper Bratt. I don't think Bratt is worth $8 million yet. He's more like no higher than $6 million. Okay, maybe 6 million to 6.8. He hasn't quite earned it yet, but he's getting to that eventually. So definitely, if the Devils don't land Timo Meier, Brock Boeser would fit just perfectly. So with that being said, there's definitely going to be some financial money talks going on. And it's really interesting to see what the Devils can do. I really think that they're onto something, especially with the cap going up $1 million in the offseason. I just think it's going to be something that is doable, but it's not going to break the bank. It's going to be an interesting season going forward, but we'll just wait to see what happens next. So, with that being said, I wish you a wonderful start to the month of February, and definitely enjoy the All-Star game and the skills competition, although some people really don't look forward to it. I certainly like the highlights, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, everybody, have a great day.